60 minutes is all it took to bring humanity to the brink of extinction. Powerful opening words, especially given the stylized Universal logo in the background, pulsating with strange purple explosions. Before the logo closes, the entire surface of the Earth is cracked and bursting with magma. As the opening titles begin, we hear of the rise of the great predator cities, and how the survival of the fastest began on a poisoned Earth. The opening scene begins, and it's hands down one of the most incredible openings to a movie I've ever seen in my entire life. We see a chase scene across a barren wasteland. Not cars or horses or anything like that, no. Actual cities are chasing each other across the wastes. Of course, I'm talking about Mortal Engines, Peter Jackson's newest epic. And when I say epic, I mean it. This film is probably one of the most interesting concepts in recent memory. I have a lot to say about this movie, and I'm going to be diving into this fascinating film, from its soaring highs to its undeniable lows. There will be some spoilers that are rather unavoidable, just to let you guys know. Also, I have not read the book, so there may be some ignorance or questions that I have that are answered by the book. And without any further ado, let's dive in. Mortal Engines is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi steampunk movie with an interesting story. In our modern age, humanity developed superweapons powerful enough to terraform the surface of the globe. In a war that only lasted for 60 minutes, humans were nearly wiped out. The cause and date of the war isn't specified in the film. After the war, humans developed moving settlements, which gave rise to the predator cities, which prowled the wastelands looking for smaller cities that they could devour, taking in all the fuel and giving the citizens jobs in their city. The biggest predator city is London. It's a hulking, towering, awe-inspiring vehicle. Crawling forward on tank treads over 200 feet tall, it has a massive Union Jack in front of it, which opens into a gaping maw that swallows smaller cities whole. The scale of London is breathtaking. It's one of the most impressive structures I've ever seen in a movie. London goes unchallenged, though there's a sinister plot developing inside. Now, before I go into the plot and characters of Mortal Engines, I just have to gush about the special effects and story world. It's one of the most intriguing story worlds I've ever seen. The sheer creativity of the moving cities is nothing short of amazing. Every shot inside London has your eyes popping out, revealing how such a ridiculous vehicle could possibly work. There's slave trading vehicles, scavengers, London itself, the Great Wall, numerous locales, and the tracks left behind by the cities, leaving monstrous gashes in the bedrock. Each scene is a visual spectacle, and this alone kept my interest the entire film. While the environment in the film is usually vast stretches of wasteland, the vehicles and moving cities more than make up for this. The filmmakers seem to think of every last detail of the cities, and I almost wish I could go to the London of Mortal Engines and get an in-depth tour. I cannot overstate how much I enjoyed the visuals in the film. It was simply amazing. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into the plot and characters. This is where the film weakens. The visual effects and world building are Oscar-worthy. The characters and story itself are not. The opening scene is the best scene in the entire movie. When the concept of moving cities is still fresh, it creates a jaw-dropping opener. We see a masked woman looking ahead in her spyglass. Ahead is a massive vehicle, a huge city on tank treads. Hurriedly, she rushes over to another town just behind her. They sound the alarm. Then the town folds up and begins to drive away from the larger city at full speed. In the following scenes, we see just how massive London is, with each scene scaling it up just a bit more. The cities chase each other across the wastes with a truly epic soundtrack in the background. It's pure thrill. Here we get introduced to the main character. His name is Tom. He's a historian working at the London Museum on board the city. He's concealing a store of old tech, which is technology from our own century. I'm not sure exactly what to think of Tom. He isn't an overly interesting character. He acts like a sort of bumbling idiot some of the time, not like the hero you would expect. I get that they were going for the unlikely hero approach, but he never really stood out to me. The deuteragonist and antagonist do, though. The female lead is a woman named Hester Shaw. She has a scar on her face and a mysterious backstory. Hester should have been the main character. She's far more interesting than Tom. She's a survivor, has a clear motivation, and is willing to do whatever it takes to achieve that motivation. Those traits don't really apply to Tom. Aside from just wanting to get back onto London, he doesn't really have any concrete goals. The villain is the charismatic Thaddeus Valentine, played masterfully by Hugo Weaving. Valentine seems like a good man on the surface, but secretly he wants to turn London into a world-ruling weapon. In one of the early scenes, we see Hester approaching Valentine with an unsheathed knife. Suddenly, she stabs him. Tom was able to stop Hester from killing Valentine, and he chases her all the way to London's trash chute, which dumps back to the ground. She falls down, telling Tom to
ask him why he murdered my mother.
When Tom tells Valentine this, he drops him down the chute. This is where the action really picks up. Esther and Tom are forced to survive together. They end up getting captured by slavers before they're miraculously saved by the leader of the anti-tractionists, Anna Fang. The anti-tractionists are rebels, and they want to destroy the predator cities like London. Fang herself is, for lack of a better word, a really cool character. Her fighting style and scenes are intense and exciting. Also, is it just me, or did she find a way to escape a Final Fantasy game? Or maybe Matrix Reloaded? I don't know. However, my problem with the scene where Fang is introduced was that Fang just so happened to be at that place at that time. It was quite the contrivance. Out of all the places on the planet, she just happened to be right there, right then? Okay then. Still following? I hope, because we're introduced to yet another character. The terrifying resurrected man named Shrike. He's a cyborg with glowing green eyes that bears a very uncanny resemblance to the Terminator. He raised Esther Shaw after Valentine killed her mother. Shrike kept her safe and becomes a rather unusual sort of father figure to Esther. However, Esther runs away from Shrike, breaking a morbid promise she'd made to the creature. Shrike then goes on a rampage, hunting Esther down. His movements were terrifying, disturbingly mechanical, yet he moved with unnerving speed. Shrike was a very interesting character. The film reaches a very keen emotional resonance with him, and while he seemed to be like a cold, emotionless killer when we first meet him, he becomes a more and more tragic and sympathetic character the more we find out. Even though his storyline doesn't quite hit the emotional notes the movie wanted it to, I still found Shrike to be extremely interesting. Fang takes Esther to the Great Wall that separates the anti-tractionist nation of Shanghuo from the Outlands beyond. Armed with the new weapon of mass destruction, London attacks the wall. This is where the climax begins. While the movie had been quite original up until now, it drops it all and goes full Star Wars. Seriously, the comparisons between A New Hope's climax and Mortal Engine's climax is nearly identical. You have a ragtag bunch of rebels attack the massive battle station armed with a superweapon. They're all outnumbered and suffer severe casualties, but one pilot is able to disarm and destroy the weapon using a particular MacGuffin they happen to have, whether it be a kill drive or the Force. Predictability ensues. Valentine is defeated, London is shut down, and the innocents of London move into Shanghuo. Not Tom and Esther, though. They fly off on Anna Fang's ship. Yeah, they have romantic feelings for each other now. That's the next topic. The story world was flawless, the idea is fresh and incredibly interesting, and the settings and visuals were some of the most impressive I've ever seen in a movie. But there were big problems with the plot and characters, and here they are. Tom and Esther's quote-unquote romance. Yeah, I never believed it for a second. The two characters just didn't have any chemistry together. I could believe them just being platonic friends or partners, but lovers? It just didn't work, especially seeing the two characters' opposing personalities. Opposites may attract sometimes, but not here. In fact, that was probably the biggest gripe I had with this movie. Their relationship was very unbelievable. Characters tended to do things out of character. Aside from Esther Shaw, Valentine, and Shrike, none of the characters were developed quite as much as I would have liked. While I really liked Valentine as a villain, I think that's just because Hugo Weaving is one of my favorite actors. If played by anyone else, I'm not sure if I would have liked him quite as much. Dialogue is sometimes clunky and cliched, and sometimes there's massive exposition dumps that don't really need to be there. That big floating city, wow, bad idea. It looked incredible, but a single match was enough to send it crashing to the ground. It would have been nearly impossible to avoid, but I feel like the characters and plot took a back seat so that the story world and lore behind Mortal Engines could be explained more fully. As I said, this would have been almost too hard to avoid. The world of Mortal Engines is so wildly radical to our own world that many things had to be explained, but I feel like the book probably did a better job. How exactly was London, or really any of the other mobile cities, constructed? I mean, a moving city the size of London would take decades to engineer and build today, and we have the industrial means to do so, I think. How were they able to make mobile cities in the industry-impoverished post-apocalyptic world of Mortal Engines? Whoops, sorry, I guess I wasn't supposed to ask that question. This film is often accused of stealing elements from other movies, and sadly that's quite true. You see pieces of Mad Max, Howl's Moving Castle, Terminator, Final Fantasy, The Matrix, and yes, Star Wars. As I mentioned before, the film's climax is a near copy-paste job of the attack on the Death Star. There's a lot of problems in this movie, and many of the scenes broke immersion for me and took me out of the movie. But the question remains, would I still recommend watching it? Yeah. This film is nothing if not spectacular. Yes, the story is very predictable. Yes, it stole quite a few elements from other different sci-fi stories. And yes, many of the characters are underdeveloped and poorly written. But the sheer awe and spectacle of watching cities chase each other across the wasteland is enough to overcome those problems for me. The film is far from perfect. It suffers from a lackluster script and a tired plot, but the concept and the visuals make it a near must-watch. The ridiculously epic opening scene for Mortal Engines is one of the best openings of a movie I've ever seen in my entire life. It's a perfect setup for the thrill ride you're about to have, made even more thrilling by the film's stellar soundtrack. The ending is rather abrupt, and I can't actually say for sure whether it sets up a sequel, which is rare these days. I give this one a hard thumbs up. Its visuals alone make it worth the watch. Its plot may not have the originality it did way back when George Lucas directed A New Hope, but the stunning effects and thrilling action make it a definite recommendation from me. Thanks for watching my review of Mortal Engines, and I gotta say, the film really made me want to read the book. That almost never happens, but I'm probably gonna go read the book now. Hopefully there's more info on Shrike in the 60-minute war. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, then leave a like, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.